Well, for more perspective on the threat posed by global hunger, I'm joined by Bobo. He's the CEO of Futurity, a consulting company on food and agriculture trends. Welcome back to the show, Jack.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So walk our audience through what have been the biggest drivers during the pandemic for the increase in food insecurity globally.
Well, it's really had to do with the global food supply chain and distribution. It goes all the way from making sure that people could get the seeds in order to plant it, that the food that was coming out of the fields could be transported and then get into the shops so that people could buy it. So the global food supply chain has been disrupted at each of those points. And because of that, it's impacted people along the entire global supply chain. And so people that produce food weren't able to, well, some people weren't able to produce the food. If they could produce the food, they couldn't ship the food. When they were able to ship the food, there wasn't anybody to distribute it. And so it's a global supply chain issue that's really driven hunger in different ways in different places.
So then how would you characterize the status of global food insecurity before the pandemic versus today?
Well, unfortunately, even before COVID hit in 2019, we were seeing a worrisome trend. We had gone from about 640 million people who were going to bed hungry in 2014 to about 690 million people who were going to bed hungry in 2019. So over the course of 5 years, there was an increase, unfortunately, of about 50 million people. But between 2019 and 2020, we had about 155 million additional people who were going to bed hungry and about 270 million people that were really in chronic hunger. So those numbers had actually about doubled. And so to put that into perspective, if that's about 850 million people. When I started working in food and agriculture and food security 20 years ago at the State Department, that was the number of people that were hungry back in 2002. So we've lost 20 years in improvements in reducing global hunger in just 1 year.
I mean, it really is incredible. So are there any countries out there that are managing this issue well or more appropriately? And what are they doing to handle that?
Well, everybody's struggling. Even in the United States, in Europe, and other places, there are absolutely disruptions. There are people who are going to bed hungry in the United States that weren't before. So this is not just a regional problem or the problem of one country, but there are a number of things that are happening. The World Bank has been working with agriculture programs in countries like Angola and Bangladesh and Pakistan to ensure that people do have the resources they need to plant the crops this growing season, so that 6 months from now we don't have an even greater crisis, because if you don't plant the crops, they won't be there when you need them at the end of the growing season.
And as you mentioned, whether you're a rich country or a poor country, you still are seeing levels of poverty and food insecurity. Are certain demographics more disproportionately affected by food insecurity?
Yeah, I think that, those that are already at risk, are more likely to just, fall into hunger. So that, there are many communities that are marginalized already, that have higher rates of unemployment, that have higher rates of poverty. And those are the ones that are going to slip through the cracks, that the system, they don't have the support network of, be able to get unemployment or to have resources that have been savings that they're able to draw on in times of crisis, because they were already living paycheck to paycheck in the developed world. In the developing world, of course, many of these people, have suffered from shocks and civil wars and other things. And so there's not much resilience that was left in the system. And so, it hit them particularly hard.
So this is something that would need to be globally coordinated. So what can and should be done to really reduce food insecurity globally?
Yeah, so I think that, it surprised many people, the fragility of our global food system. It's remarkable in many ways how much it had reduced global hunger. But the reality is that, we lost 20 years within a single year. So I think we really need to start at the root of this, which is making sure that smallholder farmers have the resources they need, both to produce the crops, but then access to markets so that they have a place to sell the products. And so I think we have to go back to the basics in terms of, what is the foundation for society. I think we have forgotten how important agriculture is.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much. Bobo there, the CEO of Futurity.